Putting on the podcast. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for attending our webinar this afternoon in Europe time and wherever you are in other part of the world. So this is Emanate. So we're running webinars regarding renewable energies, regarding sustainable development, environmental management, and any kind of field that works towards climate change mitigations. And this afternoon, we are very lucky to have three women who are working in hydrogen. And we are going to deliver this afternoon our first session in our webinar hydrogen series. And which entitled the hydrogen potentials for the decarbonization. So this webinar is going to be first presented by Fatima. And then our two experts, Rocio and Maria, is going to be joining the discussion at the end with whoever is joining from YouTube. So I would let Fatima and Rocio and Maria to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in today. My name is Fatima Melgar. I am from El Salvador originally. I will be presenting from Rosas, where I'm working as an energy consultant for smart energies at NG Impact. And I was graduated from the 2018 batch of the ME3 program.
Thank you, Fatima.
Hi everyone, this is Rocio. I come from Argentina, but I'm currently living in France. I'm starting my professional life working as a process engineer and a project management assistant in different energy field projects. I'm working there 3 years in Argentina, and then I moved to here to do a master in France. After my master, I started to work in Total Gas Renewable Power, where I had the opportunity to participate in feasibility study of energy storage systems, where hydrogen was considered long-term storage. And during the last year and a half, I am working at Agapdu for GRT Gas Client. And I'm working in, it's a biomethane injection project in the gas network. And I'm working in the engineering division.
Thank you.
Thank you. And hello everyone, my name is Maria. I'm Colombian and I'm a mechanical engineer with a master in vehicle dynamics, and I've been working in the past 4 years as an Alten consultant engineer for Toyota Motor Europe in the fuel department. So all related to the Toyota fuel cell vehicle and Toyota new mobility applications related to fuel cell, so hydrogen.
Thank you so much. So so we have the three speakers here, which are going to speak in this webinar this week and also next week. So stay tuned for the both webinars that we're going to hold in the topic of hydrogen. So now I'm going to give the floor to Fatima, who is going to present us about the hydrogen production.
Okay, let me start sharing my screen. Okay. Oh, it's jumping a little bit to the end. Okay, well, thank you very much again, everyone, for tuning in. Today, I want to share with you one topic that I'm very passionate about, and it's hydrogen technologies and their potential for decarbonization. First, let me, well, we already had a little bit of a chance to introduce ourselves, but I wanted to tell you a little bit more what I've been doing for this past time in relation to hydrogen. I have been working as a smart energy consultant at NG Impact, performing some techno-economic analysis of hydrogen chains, including the production, storage, export, and also some studies on hydrogen mobility and infrastructure. During my time at the ME3 program, I studied in the Madrid and Nantes track, and finally I did my thesis on the subject green hydrogen potential in China at the company Inicio. So what is the plan for today? I wanted to talk about three key subjects. The first is the role of green hydrogen for decarbonization. How do we produce this green hydrogen? How do we convert it to other chemicals? And finally, what is the competitiveness and outlook for this energy vector? So let's get started. Firstly, for the role of green hydrogen in decarbonization. We know that there are a lot of options to decarbonize different sectors in the economy. However, around 1/3 of the energy-related emissions have no economically viable options today. Some of these sectors include iron and steel, cement, chemicals, aluminum, and freight, which is transport over long distances. And for these purposes, large amounts of fossil fuels are currently used to generate high-grade heat, and also for the chemical reactions that take place for some of these processes. Also, high-density fuel is needed to power large vehicles and vessels over long distances. So where does hydrogen come in? Green hydrogen is a very flexible energy carrier that can enable the renewable energy system and decarbonize energy uses. How? With the production of renewable electricity, it can be injected into an electrolyzer along with water and produce hydrogen, which can enable the integration of renewables into different sectors, for example, buildings, power, industry, and transport, yielding a lot of opportunities for using hydrogen as a feedstock for heat production, and also as a chemical feedstock to decarbonize transportation by using it as a fuel, and to distribute it to other uses in buildings. So, knowing this, how do we produce it and how do we convert it into other useful chemicals? For this, I want to introduce you to two key concepts. The first is the concept of the hydrogen chain and the concept of the levelized cost of hydrogen. First, the hydrogen chain. It's all of the different blocks that you see here and technologies that help us produce the hydrogen and carry it to the end users, and also to convert it for further transportation or other end users. And how do we measure the competitiveness of a particular hydrogen production chain? It's by calculating the levelized cost of hydrogen, which consists of the sum of the discounted costs over the lifetime of the project. So this is the capex and the opex of all of the different technologies that you see here. And this is divided over the sum of the discounted hydrogen production over the lifetime of this project. So this is how many tons, for example. So from this image, it can seem a little bit complex at the moment, you can see that many types of chains are possible. What does this mean? For example, you could produce hydrogen by an electrolyzer using electricity and water and use it on site. Or you could also produce it and then compress it, store it, and then take it in a pipe to an end user a few kilometers away, or even on the same site, or carry it by a truck. You could also transport it in this way to a conversion facility, and then ship it over even continents when it is converted into other chemicals such as ammonia, methanol, synthetic methane, or turned into liquid hydrogen. So all of these different end users and the distances at which it needs to be shipped are important steps that need to be taken into account when constructing the whole hydrogen chain for a particular end use. But in order to calculate what is the landed cost at the end user place, there are three important components that I wanted to illustrate today that have a large impact on the final levelized cost of hydrogen. The first component that I want to discuss is the electrolyzer. The electrolyzer is the core technology for green hydrogen production. Two inputs are needed, water and electricity. Basically, the electrolyzer uses electricity to split the water into hydrogen and oxygen. Two main technologies exist for this: alkaline and polymer electrolyte membrane. Their materials differ, and also they have other differences in terms of capex, efficiency, the footprint of the system. But in general, the main parameters that influence the final levelized cost of hydrogen that I want to discuss today are four. These four parameters are the capex requirements, the conversion efficiency, the electricity costs, and the annual operating costs. Firstly, in the image here to the right, you can see a graph illustrating the capex of the electrolyzer systems. You can see that currently they are a little bit expensive at around $800 per kilowatt for an alkaline system, and around 1,400 or 500 for a PEM system. How do these costs go down? How can we make them go down? Well, of course, there is technological advancement that can take place, but at the moment, the main parameter is the size of the installation. So in this case, bigger is better, because at larger scale production, so larger megawatts capacity for the electrolyzer, the costs go down dramatically. Also, another important parameter, the second one, is the conversion efficiency. How many kilowatts of electricity do we need to produce 1 kilogram of hydrogen? You can see that for different technologies, this parameter can vary from around 51 kilowatts per kilogram to 58, and this is expected to improve over time. So, given that, since the electricity is the main feedstock, of course, the electricity cost and the annual operating hours of the electrolyzer are also key components, are also key parameters. So the next two parameters that I want to explain are a little bit more complex, but I hope you can pay attention to this part. So the second two parameters are the utilization rate and the electricity costs. Higher utilization rates, so it means like how many hours in a year an electrolyzer is producing hydrogen, have a very high influence, because they can help to spread out the capex into more hours of the year, yielding lower costs. But according to the different configurations that you could have, there is also an additional parameter, because you can see here from the curve that in the middle it's the lowest, and then as you advance, this becomes a little bit higher. Why is this? Because if you really want to operate an electrolyzer every hour of the year, it means if it's grid connected, that you will have to buy more expensive electricity at certain points of the year. And if you have a configuration based on renewables, as you can see in the figure on the right, then it means that at the middle you have the optimal utilization rate, because you have a good trade-off between the size of your equipment for PV or wind, for example, and battery. But as you advance and you increase the utilization rate, the battery may become oversized, and then it means that your electricity injected into the electrolyzer will become more expensive, and therefore your operating costs become more expensive, thus contributing to a higher LCOH. You can see in the image below here also the influence of different costs of electricity, different levelized costs of electricity, and the full load hours in the levelized cost of hydrogen. You can see that with both parameters, the cost can go down dramatically. So the key message here is that all of these are very important parameters that need to be taken into account. And there is sometimes certain trade-offs between one or other parameters that can lead to lower costs. The second block that I wanted to discuss with you today, it's the storage technologies. Of course, at some point you will need to store the hydrogen before you transport it, or while you are going to use it at your industry or gas station, for example. So here, the pressurized containers are currently the most used technology, but there are other technologies that can help us to store hydrogen at higher volumes, for example. So some technologies such as liquid hydrogen, in which the gas hydrogen has to be liquefied, or you also have some other options which are based on geographical formations, where you can store very large volumes, but they are not available everywhere geographically. Another important point is to take into account what is the density that you can store in a certain storage technology, because some of them will have a smaller or a larger footprint, and in some cases this can be an important parameter. And finally, of course, like the cost of these technologies. You can see that some of these technologies are more expensive than others, but maybe their cost can be weighted against other parameters that I have talked to you just now. And finally, the next block that I wanted to discuss with you today is the cost of transport. Because as we have discussed before, larger installations of electrolyzers for production yield a lower capex for the electrolyzer. So it means large-scale production is potentially cheaper. So you need to distribute this across different distances at a local, urban, intercity, or even intercontinental distances at varying volumes. Maybe some users require a very small amount, and some of them require a very large amount. So how do you decide which one is the best technology for you? So you have to take these two parameters into account to decide what is the state in which you want to transport this hydrogen. It can be compressed, liquid, or you can transform it into ammonia or into a liquid organic hydrogen carrier, and transported through different means. For example, trucks or pipes, or even ships for intercontinental journeys. You can see that all of these technologies and the different states in which hydrogen can be transported yield a very different cost in terms of dollars per kilogram, which are illustrated here. They can be very small, for example, for some transmission pipelines, or they can be very large for intercity, for example, intercity compressed gas transport. So, knowing what are the main parameters that influence the levelized cost of hydrogen, what is the competitiveness and the outlook for this technology? So first, I want to illustrate this by showing you what does the levelized cost of hydrogen look like for certain users and in certain locations. You can see from this graph that for large-scale users, the cost in 2030 can be as low as $1.50 per kilogram. But regardless of that, it can be this price in a place like Australia that has very high PV availability, but it can be a lot more expensive in a place like Japan, which has a little bit lower availability of renewables. So this graph, it's important to notice the influence of the cost of renewables and also on the capex of the electrolyzer, because at larger installations, the capex will be spread out over more volume. Over the years, there is an expected decrease in this levelized cost of hydrogen due to the drop in the cost of renewables and also in the capex of the electrolyzers. So keep these numbers a little bit in mind. And for the next graph, you can see that for small scale users, the costs become higher. You can see that sometimes they are even 2 times or 3 times as high as compared to our previous large scale users. Here, you can see that the different configurations of the hydrogen chain have an influence on the final costs. You can see that for an on-site small-scale installation, it can be quite more expensive than the installation of an off-site production with delivery by truck. It's a little bit less expensive than on-site, and for large-scale delivery with a pipe, it can be a lot cheaper. And similarly, as in the previous graph, the production costs will come lower with time. So, taking this into account, how does this translate into competitiveness in certain industries? I want to share with you 2 cases of 2 industries that can be potentially interesting in the medium and long term. And the first one, it's the utilization of hydrogen for steel production. In steel production, you need to generate high-grade heat. So hydrogen can be combusted to generate this heat, and also as a reactant in certain reactions. So you can see that by 2030, green hydrogen can already be competitive with some of the higher range of costs of coal for generating this heat, and also of natural gas. How can this competitiveness be further enhanced? So some sources like Bloomberg suggest a carbon price to achieve full competitiveness. Next, the next sector that I wanted to show you is ammonia. Why is ammonia important? Because it's a feedstock for the production of fertilizers. And hydrogen can be used here as one of the feedstocks for the reaction called ammonia synthesis. In this case, we can see that we can achieve competitiveness by year 2030 with natural gas, as compared to natural gas, with the difference that hydrogen will have more stable prices as compared to natural gas it's a market, and it has very fluctuating costs. So it can provide some security to the producers about the cost of their feedstock. Similarly, a carbon price is suggested to achieve full competitiveness. Finally, I wanted to show you some of the success stories that we already have today. We can see that there are already some case studies, demonstrations, and even some industrial applications across different sectors. For example, we have some companies producing fuel cell vehicles, or we have some traditional companies investing into assets to produce green hydrogen at a very large scale. One of the largest ammonia producers fertilizer producers in the world is also implementing a pilot study to produce ammonia with green hydrogen. And even in the city of Nantes, you can already cross the river on a hydrogen powered boat. As for the key takeaways, the things that I would really like you to keep in mind from this presentation, if you remember nothing else, please remember this. First, that scaling up hydrogen production is key to unlocking a low LCOH, because large installations yield a lower CapEx for electrolyzers. But other trade-offs between storage, transport costs, and electricity are still important. In terms of the configuration of the hydrogen chain, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. Multiple configurations are possible, and every step needs to be taken into account when reaching a final decision. Finally, hydrogen has the potential to decarbonize sectors and integrate renewables into some very hard-to-abate sectors, such as ammonia, and steel making. and others in other sectors that we will discuss in our next session as well, such as hydrogen mobility. Finally, multiple demonstrations are already in place worldwide. I will leave here some sources for all of the information that you have seen before concerning the sources, and some further reading in case you are interested in this topic. So we will proceed to the Q&A, and I will be very happy to hear all of your questions. And thank you very much for your attention, of course.
Thank you very much, Fatima, for the very brief but interesting presentations about hydrogen. So about hydrogen productions, and to cover the production, the storage, transport, and how the competitiveness of hydrogen as well. Do we have any feedback from our experts in the meeting room? Do you have questions or probably comments from what Fatima just presented?
In my case, I don't have a specific question, but I am completely agree that at scale, the the, the hydrogen project can helps to decrease the cost of hydrogen. So in that case, I think it's really, really important to perform the different feasibility studies and demonstrator as well to try to understand more this kind of technology and to go further, because the roadmap that hydrogen is developing nowadays is really, really promising. So I think it's really, really important go ahead with this kind of subjects.
Okay, I agree with that too. Thank you. And Maria?
No, I don't have any questions as well, but as I would like just to point out, that she say also that it's clear that the hydrogen application and hydrogen technology is not something from a future technology. It's something that is happening in the present, is existing and is ready, and that's what we have to start thinking and seeing hydrogen technologies in that way. It's not a future technology, it's present, is now.
Yeah, that is very true. So we are going to take some questions from our audience in YouTube. And we have a question from Himalaya Birshesta. Thank you for the question. What is the range of differences between the values of levelized cost of hydrogen production, retail price of hydrogen for transport sector, and hydrogen price for industry sector? Do we know any information about this?
I don't know if you can still see my slides.
No, but
No?
you can
Okay.
share it if you want. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So as you could see in the just a second. So this is, I think, one guiding a little bit, this is something that can help you that can help us answer this question. But the answer is that it is very variable. That is the first, because as you can see, like it is, like the cost is composed of so many different components across the whole chain. So it will vary with the scale. It can be, you can see here for year 2030 from 1.48 to 2.85 dollars per kilogram, depending on the geographic location.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it can also depend on the technological advancement when we relate it to the time horizon. And when referring to the scale, you can see that the cost can increase with decreasing scale by a factor even of 2, as you can see here, and also with the configuration of the whole chain. For on-site or off-site production, the transportation costs can also contribute. So I would say the answer is a very large range of variability.
Okay, thank you for the answers. And then the next question we're going to take again from YouTube. So yeah, so this is a question from Louise. Based on the results, looks like a lot of the cost reductions come from centralized energy source, but the future of renewable energy is decentralized. Is there any strategy for NG for this that you know of?
Okay. Yeah. In terms of the NG strategy, I think that is something that probably I cannot discuss in this forum. But of course, it is important for large companies like Engie or Total or EDF, who have been traditionally linked to gas production, for example, to potentiate green hydrogen as a fuel of the future. That I can say. Um, in terms of the decentralized production, I would say that it is a little bit difficult to say because, as you could see, uh, there are different configurations that are possible on site and off site. So you would have to consider the costs along the whole chain to think about if you need a decentralized or a centralized uh, energy source. And also, I think currently other instruments that can be used are, for example, renewable energy certificates or power purchase agreements that that can help decentralized production. In addition to that, the dropping costs of energy storage, such as batteries, can also help to potentiate that. But at the moment, it would still be a trade-off between having a big, let's say, PV plant or a wind power plant, and an oversized battery could contribute also to making your hydrogen more expensive. But with dropping costs of batteries, maybe it will become possible more and more in the future.
Okay, maybe this is. I have a follow-up questions on this, or maybe more comments. I don't know. Like because hydrogen is kind of one way to for now to store energy, right? Is hydrogen competing with battery, or it is supplementing batteries at the moment? Do you think it's something that they cannot compete? They have different playing field, or
For me,
I would
the
say it's not a competing technology.
yeah, I'm
I,
agree.
I don't know. I would like the and like or other speakers also take on this one maybe. Yeah.
I
I
think they are complementing
yeah,
technologies
I'm agree with that.
totally.
Because actually you
Okay.
are thinking like in long-term and short-term storage. So you try to optimize the utilization of both to try to perform most running hours of the electrolyzer. But you can have a low power bank of the batteries to store the same electricity that you will use with the hydrogen. So it's a different way. That's why you separate the mode in short and long term. So I think that they are not competing. They are going together in the
From
way.
the applications point of view, they are just simply working in different ranges. What we can do, for example, in mobility with batteries is some ranges, maybe low ranges, that are necessary for example, fleet cars, city trips. And then if you complement the full picture of the requirement range of mobility, then hydrogen come to be a part. But as I say, it's a complement. They are not fighting against each other. They are not working most efficiency in the same type of range. So you will
Right.
need batteries for some applications, some areas, and then hydrogen will complement in the areas where batteries are not so strong, and vice versa.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you so much. And the next question is, what's the biggest market in terms of hydrogen use?
Okay.
Everyone can answer this.
Yeah. So there is maybe a key difference between what is the current use of hydrogen and the future use. Currently, hydrogen is already a chemical that is being used in many industries. If I'm not mistaken, well, some industries such as the ammonia and refining are already big markets for hydrogen that is produced on a traditional way, and that can be also decarbonized.
Okay. Next question that we have is from Frank. However, okay, so how do you compare the competitiveness of hydrogen and electric and electric in vehicle sector in case of power use? I personally would like to take a veto on here to answer this question in the next webinar session, because our next webinar session is going to focus on the applications of hydrogen. And so, yeah, Frank, you're invited to come again for the next session to discuss further about this
Vehicle
curiosity.
sector, yes.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And the next question that we're going to take is, oh, interesting. Can you share your view on the risk management and safety analysis involved in these hydrogen technologies? So I will leave it to the speakers whether we are going to discuss this now or already now or maybe further in the applications.
Mm,
Oh, go
For
ahead.
a short answer, yeah.
Yeah.
No, you go
ahead,
ahead.
Marima.
You go ahead. For a short answer, I would say some technologies such as electrolysis are completely safe. But maybe perhaps it's in the storage and the transportation that some safety concerns can arise. But these are technologies that are already quite mature also in some ways and that can keep maturing.
Yeah, just maybe to complement your answer, as I say, is a present technology, and in the chain of making that technology real now and feasible now and already ready in the market now means that all these safety risk and considerations have been done, and it's part of the of having the technology ready. I mean, the vehicles or the chips that are hydrogen powered, they are there, and they have all this safety being considered. It's something that is being done, that is ready, and they have the same risk as any other type of power supply chain has done in the past, like diesel or gasoline or any other type.
Yeah. And furthermore, I think like the little by little, a lot of standards, international standards like ISO and this type are converging little by little into more and more universal rules, especially for the storage of hydrogen.
Correct. Exactly. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the next question we're going to take from someone, I cannot really say the name. Is there an average break-even point for green hydrogen projects? Maybe first we can talk about what is the difference between the gray and the green and the blue, and also if there is already identified break-even point, or how should we analyze this if there is no?
I would say first of all for the definitions of different types of hydrogen. So we define green hydrogen as the produced exclusively from renewable sources. Then we have others, for example, gray hydrogen. If I'm not mistaken, it's produced also by CO2 capture by introducing some like a clean CO2 in a way
Okay.
to the traditional hydrogen production process. As for the break-even point, I would say, as with any project, it varies with the conditions, with the local conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is true. Any other comments from the other speakers for this? Okay. So I have actually a few questions. Hold on, just give me a moment. Yeah. So now that hydrogen is kind of, it's still a niche market, and there are a lot of cost factors that needs to be tackled. What are actually my question is, what are the main barriers in making the hydrogen production chips? Are there because of the demand? Is it because the materials on its own are expensive, or what are actually the main barriers?
Okay, I would say maybe like the first, of course, the small scale at which they are produced right now is obviously a barrier, and also that so in that case there is some support needed in terms of the legislation and the policy, also to encourage some industrial actors and different types of actors to integrate green gases into their operations.
Okay.
That can help. with the cost. Sure.
Okay.
Also political, many all the fashion type of energy producers, energy carriers, they are also playing a role in trying to stay in the game,
Hmm.
of course that has an impact in in how to make cheaper and how to introduce and maybe make the hydrogen like a main carrier.
Yeah. So basically, we need more support from the regulations and from the politicians' point of view.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And in what countries, your observation, like maybe in Europe or in even in other part of the world, are more advanced in terms of adapting hydrogen research and development, and is also upscaling their integration? Are there like particular countries that we should look up to, or everyone are doing the same thing?
Well, from my point of view, at least, I would say Japan. Japan, they have done an incredible job in standardize, at least from automotive sector that I can speak,
Mm-hmm.
having standards for the hydrogen stations, how to store, how to have a pure hydrogen for the good performance of the vehicles. They have developed hydrogen vehicles, hydrogen buses. I knew they were preparing a big hydrogen society presentation and a show up for the Olympic Games of 2020. Uh, so they are, I think they are going really ahead. They are studying the performance. They are trying to improve the technology. Uh, Japan, I will
Okay.
say. Yeah.
All right.
Here in Europe, I know that Germany, for example, has done a really big investment in having a hydrogen station, a good rid of hydrogen stations. So the mobility with hydrogen vehicles will be easier because, of course, that's one of the main challenges when you are deploying fleets of hydrogen vehicles. You have to need the hydrogen stations, and then it's like an egg of chicken type of discussion. Hydrogen stations, they want more cars in the field, but if we want to put more cars in the field, we need more stations. So who should do the investment first, and so on. And Germany has done a really, really great job in this hydrogen station grid type of development.
Okay. And maybe another question for me is still about what are, in on your knowledge, what are the main area of research that are still going on now in terms of hydrogen at the moment, hydrogen production. Probably we will focus on that. Are they trying to find new materials, new methodologies, or do you know any other research area in hydrogen at the moment?
I would say maybe from the cost point of view, maybe how to optimize the 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 size of the different components. I think that is kind of a research area, but that also overlaps also with the commercial development.
Mm.
Also, I know from some previous studies I performed that for hydrogen storage on the vehicles, this is an area of research for making smaller and smaller tanks that are still safe. I
I
think
will say
that's also a very
also liquid hydrogen. It's
yeah,
also a
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
big
The
point of
yeah.
transport.
research now. Yeah,
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think liquid hydrogen is particularly interesting because it has like a more density, so it's you need less space to store it, to
exactly.
transport it, and
Exactly.
it's also interesting because it can be used as a fuel for ships for transcontinental transport, and this is one very difficult, extremely difficult sector to abate just by using renewables or batteries, for example.
Indeed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, do we have other questions from the audience? Yeah, we will see again if there are more questions from YouTube. Don't hesitate to post your questions. Okay, we have questions from Paula. In terms of policy, are you aware of incentives or subsidies from the government side to speed up the hydrogen market, like INDCs?
Here,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Like including as far as I'm aware, is not included specifically into some countries' INDCs. Not to my knowledge. But at least in the European Union, for example, there are a lot of projects that are financed by the European institutions. Some demonstration projects that receive funding.
Yeah, here Europe has done a great job. There is a fuel cell joint undertaking group that has several focus areas of projects like mobility focus projects, storage projects, many of them, and they are really trying to improve the technology, to improve the performance, the efficiency, and a lot of demonstration projects in focus of this to
Okay.
develop the hydrogen society. Yes, Europe, yes.
So it's more about funding on the development of hydrogen, but not exactly the subsidies on adopting the hydrogen for now, right? It's more the funding on projects.
Yeah, not to
Yeah.
this point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. So I have another question. Okay, is hydrogen storage strictly for industrial application? And how about other sectors such as residential? From Joseph. So Joseph, I'm going to have these questions answered next week because we're going to focus on the application next week. So we're going to move on to the next question from Nikita. How does the energy density of hydrogen compare with conventional fossil fuels?
So let me think. The density of hydrogen is something like 33 kilowatt hours per kilogram. Yes.
Yeah.
How does that compare to the conventional fossil fuels?
I know megajoule, 42 megajoule per kilogram of diesel.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, we have the numbers, so now we can compare.
yeah, but I have the number for that, but I don't have the number for the fossil fuel. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there you go, Nikita. It's 33
But
Yeah.
what I do
hours
know
per
is
kilogram.
that it is competitive in terms of the energy density, but the difference is in the volumetric
Volume.
density.
That's the
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so so it's constant for the mass density, yeah?
Yes. Yes.
Great. I hope that answers. Okay, we are going to take one last question now. Do you think today's drop in petroleum price will incentivize petroleum producing countries or companies to invest in hydrogen to have more stable economies? What is your take on that? It
Well,
is,
I
yeah,
hope so.
I
I
hope
hope so.
Yeah.
more like a
For
hope
sure.
than an opinion, yes, but
Yeah.
yeah,
We also have some interest from some petroleum producing countries already, and even some petroleum producing companies to invest to start investing in hydrogen. As you could see in one of like the one of the existing projects is financed by Shell. So I think that they also have an interest in exploring certain technologies that can hedge them against the future.
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So I hope that answers Jose your question. And okay, so thank you very much for the speakers and also for the audience who have been very responsive towards this webinar. And don't forget, so next week we are going to have to hold another session, and we are going to focus on the application of hydrogen. And I invite you using this link. Hold on, can you post? Maybe I will post this link on YouTube so that audience can actually go to the forum. And then now that you know about hydrogen and you learn more about hydrogen, what is it that you want us to cover in the next hydrogen session in the next week, so that we can prepare our materials and to answer more about what is your curiosity about hydrogen applications. And we are going, For you guys who want to keep in touch with our speakers, with Maria, with Fatima, and also with Rocio, feel free as well to go to their LinkedIn profile. They are very open and would be welcome anyone who have the curiosity about hydrogen and ask more about their projects. So thank you so much, and see you next week. And have a good afternoon, or have a good evening, and or have a good morning. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Bye bye.
everyone.
Thanks to
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.
Talk
Thank
soon.
Bye bye.
you.